Hi, welcome to International Love Story, your podcast about long distance and multicultural relationships. My name is Ignacio.
And my name is Christina. In today's episode, we are going to talk to Varsha. Varsha is a relationship coach and she's coaching singles, but also couples. And we are going to talk about a few very important topics. One topic that's specifically very important to me because I have made that experience that when being in a long distance relationship, it's quite difficult for everyone who's close to you, like family members or friends, to understand what you're going through, the struggle and the feelings you're having. It's difficult for them to relate, especially if they've never made an experience like that. And for someone who is dating on long distance, for someone who's dating in a multicultural relationship, it can be also make the impression that, the one who should be close to you, that they're not willing to help you, that they're not willing to support you. But thinking about it out of the other perspective, it's difficult for them. They don't know what to say. They don't know what to do exactly. And this leads us to another very important topic we are going to talk about in this episode, which is communication. Why is it important to communicate with your family members, with your friends, everyone who's close to you? Why is it important to communicate with your partner? And this includes the 5 love languages. So you see, we are going to talk about a wide range of topics. Unfortunately, we weren't able to go deeper into the one or the other topic. But as always, if there's something specific you'd like to know, feel free to contact us. Feel free to contact Varsha as well. And enjoy to listen to our little chat with Varsha. It was, by the way, also a mini coaching, but it was super interesting and we learned so much. Let's just dive directly into it. Thank you so much for your time, Varsha. We hope you're doing fine.
Thank you for having me. Yes, thank you so much. I look forward to this.
Let's just start with you introducing yourself. So what are you doing? Where are you located right now? So that everyone who's listening to us right now knows who you are.
Yeah, thanks. I am Varsha and I'm a relationship coach. I work with singles and I work with couples to really make sure that you're in an empowered, healthy, and happy relationship. Because I myself have been through a lot of ups and downs and feel like the struggle does not have to be done alone, nor does it have to feel like a struggle. There's always a way to be empowered in your relationships. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina in the United States, and I've always worked virtually with clients, which has given me a really nice opportunity to work with people all over the globe. And even before the pandemic, it was always video calls, which really allows people to open up more comfortably when they're in their own personal private space, which is really nice.
The topics we would love to cover today is, of course, especially long distance couples, how they can handle specific situations, because while interviewing other couples, we realize that at some point they always have the same questions somehow. So even though if every story is unique, they do face different challenges while they're dating on long distance, but also when closing the distance. And that's actually something we would love to talk about with you today, Varsha, because one thing we recognized is that while being in a long distance relationship, it's difficult to talk about that with family and friends. It's difficult for family members and for friends to understand what you're going through. And even though if they ask if you're doing fine and you start explaining what you have to deal with in your long distance relationship, they try to help. But to be honest, it's not always easy for them as well, as they've most probably not have been through a situation like that. As well as on the other side, as someone who is in a long distance relationship, it's quite difficult to understand, or at least this is how I felt, to understand why there's basically no one who's able to support you or to help you asking the right questions and trying to give advice. What advice could you give as a relationship coach for everyone who has family members and friends who want to help, but who really can't help in a way that they can provide you all the answers and all the information you need to stay strong?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is so much of a pertinent question because in most cultures, in most environments, people are used to finding someone in their town or their city or their country. And it's just a new concept to be able to like reach someone across the globe and connect with them on this deep of a level. So I think for parents, uncles and aunts, and then like you said, even a friend who maybe is your age but has a boyfriend in town or a girlfriend in town, it's just unfathomable. The number one thing that I have found that supports people in this area is to be really intentional about how you communicate with these people if you need their support, or if you're expecting their support. So to actually say to them, hey, this is something that I'm noticing you're not familiar with, that makes you uncomfortable, and then actually tell them how they can be supportive to you. Like, it actually hurts me when you say something negative or encourage me to meet someone else. But what I need instead is for you to tell me to be true to my heart, tell me to make sure that I'm happy, check in with me if I'm lonely, and actually be really clear about what you need from them, because people don't know unless you tell them what you need. So that has been a tremendous support. And I think it's also useful to have these kinds of conversations in a very specific way. So set your friend aside, set your parents aside and say, look, this is what I'm choosing to do in my life. And don't just have the conversation when it's in the heat of a moment or in an argument, but to really be like, hey, do you have 10, 15 minutes? Because I need to talk about this topic and I want to be on the same page with you, and show the intention of wanting to be like a team about it.
Communication is also the key in that sense, like communicating with your family, with your friends, trying to make them understand what you're going through. I tried it, for example, I just can't talk out of my perspective, but it was always super difficult because even though if I'm good with words, it was just trying to show them my perspective and where we are currently at in our relationship. And of course, there were, if you could say so, negative voices that afterwards they just try to protect me so I'm not running into the wrong direction or falling into something that might be difficult for me to get out afterwards. So they were really, really protective. And I tried at least to communicate it in a way that others would understand. But at a specific point, I kind of also got sick of it. So I didn't know that. Now I know, obviously, that there are other couples making same experiences as we did and as we're still doing, because we still learn every day. But to get back to the point, in that moment, you feel alone. And so do you think it's important also to communicate this with your partner? Because Nacho deals differently with specific situations than I do. And I know that for him, it wasn't easy as well. I wasn't sure if he would even understand what I'm going through. So what can I do to make myself understand to the person I love, to the person that should go through the same emotions and feelings as I am going through?
Yeah. So there's actually two things that I want to say to what you just elaborated on. First of all, just going back one step, it's easier for me to say, yeah, communicate with your family and everything will be fine. It's not. It's a lot easier said than actually done. So in those cases, what I like to emphasize to my coaching clients is really take a look at, are you trying to prove yourself? And if you get into the mentality of like proving and having to convince people that your way is the right way, then take a look at whether you're doubting it from yourself internally or whether you're just doubting it because these external factors are there. Because if you are confident in your decision to be with this person, to really develop this long distance relationship, then sometimes it does mean detaching yourself from the influences so that it doesn't keep bothering you, like, so you don't feel like you have to constantly prove yourself. And for a lot of people also, if the communication is not strong in their family, doing it in baby steps, like not just having a big family meeting one day and blowing up the whole thing, but like slowly introducing them to the concepts can also be really useful. As far as sharing this with your partner, like how do you even tell them what you're going through when you're worlds away? Yeah, I mean, I think it's almost the same thing. And you're going to hear me say this communication piece a lot. And there's like the blanket communication, and then there's the intricacies of communication, which means what is it that your partner needs to do to make you feel heard, and asking them to do those things that make you feel heard. Because sometimes it's as simple, like for me, it's always like just saying like, oh, Varsha, you're doing a great job. I understand you. I hear you. Thank you for sharing with me. To me, that goes a long way. For some people, they might need just venting, a partner to like just say like, yeah, let it out. I'm here. You know, so it's going to really vary, because what ends up happening, and this is in that book, if you've read Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, it's an old book. And it kind of talks about how sometimes the male partner in a relationship will want to solve all your problems. And then it goes into like, well, my family's giving me a hard time. And so then the other partner might be like, oh, well, let me quickly close the gap. Let me fix it. Let me make her feel better. And it's sometimes impossible. And so actually like realizing what the reality is in how you communicate and what's needed can make the world of difference. And again, it's going to go back to you two as a couple or any couple to determine what's actually needed here, because I can't technically come over and fix your problem right now, but what can I do for you?
Did you feel that way when we used to date on long distance, that you have to fix the problem for me?
The only tool I had is communication, talking on FaceTime. So it has like levels, right? It's like a WhatsApp message or a WhatsApp voice message or an actual call or maybe a FaceTime. I guess if those are the tools you have when you want to have someone settle down, yes, of course, I would feel the necessity of calling you as soon as possible.
Making me feel better. It's just interesting because we've never talked about that topic in detail. So Nacho and I, we just found a way to communicate, but basically to think about it in a way that, I mean, of course, he always wanted me to feel good and to feel supported, but that he might have felt that he has to fix my emotions and my feelings. I've never seen it out of that perspective, to be honest. That's very interesting.
And it's not the case for every couple. And so the way that I do my coaching is it really depends. That may not have at all been an issue for you guys, but it might be for somebody else. And so we really have to look at what's going to be useful to you in any given situation.
Yeah, of course. I mean, as I said, every couple is unique. Every story is unique. Different factors are playing into it. Like there's the culture difference in most cases. Finding a way of communicating with each other despite all the external factors coming together is just not that easy sometimes to navigate through it. It's not easy to understand where the other person is coming from, because there's so many things that you have to take into account as well when dating someone from the other end of the world. So I'm really happy, Varsha, that you are here to scratch the surface. Unfortunately, we're not able to go into detail and to talk about it in detail, but to ensure us that it's a natural feeling and that it's okay to feel that way as long as you find a way to communicate. And talking about communications, is there anything you feel many couples have in common despite where they're from or despite their religion? Can you give any advice how to meet in the middle? Because often it's about meeting in the middle, especially when coming from different cultures.
One thing we all have in common is love and intuition.
Mm-hmm.
So I think so many times in long distance relationships, what happens is the conversations tend to, especially when there's trouble in the air, the conversations tend to lean towards, let's fix this.
Mm-hmm.
Let's solve it. Let's close the gap. What's next for us, and actually thinking about constantly the logistics of things rather than just focusing on connecting and really being like aware of who this other person is, enjoying each other's company, learning about what they're doing every day in their lives in order to determine what their lifestyle is like. Despite cultural differences, we're all as human beings doing the same things, going to work, being close to family and friends, exercising or not exercising. And so, it's really important to actually connect on that level and then let the logistics figure themselves out as time progresses. Mm-hmm. What I often say is that the date nights are just as important as what I call an anti-date night, which is when you can talk about figuring it out and checking in with one another as to how you are on the logistics of the relationship, and to actually set time aside for that so that the bulk of your conversations aren't geared towards these sort of figuring out things, but really more geared towards connecting with one another.
What I understand as well is that also living in the moment and going one step after the other, as there are going to be a bunch of things to take care of along your relationship. And talking to so many couples, we also learned that some of them, after several years, they still weren't able to close the distance, but they're still working on it. They're still hoping. They still trust that they will success closing the distance sooner or later, even though if they don't know when this is going to be. But what they do is taking one step after the other. Of course, there's a mountain of things to take care of, but if you just grab a few little things, and then you just go step by step, you will succeed as long as you are believing in love and working on the same goal.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. I always think that believing in the possibility is more important than knowing how to do it. And that is the key to long distance relationships, because especially for young people, if you're in a certain kind of job or a certain kind of educational time period of your life, there's no way out right now. And that's okay. That doesn't mean that the long term of your life won't be with this partner of yours that you love.
And having doubts while being in such a relationship is also something natural, if you could say so. I mean, in any other relationship, it's the case as well. But how do you handle when you get in a situation and you really don't know how to solve a specific problem that just occurs, and you really don't know when to close the distance? You really don't know if you're going to be able to live together, when it's going to be, and a day where you think that there is no way for your love to grow and for your loved one to be together soon. So what do I do when I have a day like that?
Yeah, this is so, so important, because the number one thing is, first of all, set aside time to allow this thought process, because like you said, it's absolutely normal, but you don't want it to define who you are, who the relationship is, or your entire life should not be driven by this conversation all the time. So once you're in that conversation, take a look at what's triggering it. Is it merely loneliness? This week you're more lonely than another week because your partner's not with you. Is it that you actually have doubts about this particular individual that you're with? Or is it something else? It could be a number of things that's causing you to worry, because that's what I'm hearing, is that there's a worry. So take a look at where it's stemming from, because accordingly, then you can address it. It might mean doing something to make you feel better, like something to distract you, or it might mean actually having a conversation with your partner to let them know that you're having these doubts. But I think more than anything, it's important to acknowledge them, be with them, and let them happen without making it mean that your relationship is ruined. Because you're right, it does happen anywhere. You could be living next door to your boyfriend or with your boyfriend and still feel the same way, right? Relationships are not black and white. They are about the gray area forever. I mean, it's going to happen 20 years from now, just as much as it may happen now. So being willing to live in the gray area will just strengthen you and strengthen the relationship.
Can only agree with that. Thank you for that advice.
the long-term goal is to close the distance. And then afterwards, I mean, we've been there as well. There are several other things you also have to take care of. This is what you just said as well. So it never ends. It's always like you always have to deal with specific things, no matter if it's an intercultural relationship or if you're living with someone together who's from the same country as you are, and to let those feelings not affect you, but to let it just happen and to not push them away is so important, which brings us to the next topic, because we realized as we closed the distance that there are so many things coming together. I mean, Nacho was always confident, even though the moment we said yes, so the moment we got married, that everything will be fine, while I had a lot of things in my mind, like if it's going to work out, which are supernatural. What if it's not going to work out? I moved to Miami, like all the way from Germany to Miami to live together with him. I've never lived together with him before or any other man. So there were so many things going through my head. I realized that communication is important as well. So communicating my feelings towards Nacho. But I still felt like even I communicated those feelings, I felt overwhelmed and alone. So what I did is I had some escape vacation. I went to Prague alone. I tried to escape my feelings. I was so overwhelmed because that was the moment where I knew it's either going to work out or it's not going to work out. And that's the goal we worked on for so long. And suddenly it was there. And suddenly it was overwhelming and it was too much. And I think I handled it not perfect, but is there anything you could advise to deal with a situation like that better than I did years ago, for example?
Yes, there are a few things I want to say. First of all, okay, two big things. One is directly towards you, if you don't mind. Are you open to it?
I'm open to it.
Okay, you seem very hard on yourself. And it sounds like you are judging how you handled it. But for example, like with me, going on a trip by myself is actually a way that I recuperate. And it's a way that I reinvent how I want to address things. So consider that what you're defining as a negative way of handled it could have actually been your process. And so actually taking a look at that as being like totally okay. Because again, anytime we say things that are right and wrong, that in itself is wrong, because there is just no right way to do this. And it sounds like you did what maybe you felt instinctually, and that's cool. So the other thing I want to say is along this particular piece is understanding what I call, or in coaching is called your overwhelm cycle. And we typically have these same patterns. Like maybe for you, when you get overwhelmed, you run away. That's cool. But knowing that that's what you do and kind of seeing it before it happens or seeing it when it happens and actually empowering the thing that you choose to do to deal with it is more than half the battle. And you can do this in any part of your life, not just with relationships. At work, you might see yourself like closing down when you get extra files on your desk or whatever, right? So similarly, what I recommend to everyone is to notice these patterns. Take a look at where it might have been the case outside of your relationship. How did you deal with this kind of overwhelm? And how can you actually implement those things that support you to get through them? And then the second thing is what I really hear that you did, both of you essentially did, was jump into some really deep unknown place out of sheer commitment. And you chose that commitment despite your feelings. And this is a huge piece of really important foundational concept in coaching, which is to actually make decisions in your life outside of your emotions. Because our emotions do not define us. They are often a great indicator of something or another, but they don't necessarily have to be the thing that you choose from. So it sounds like you both chose each other despite that overwhelm, despite that unknown. And living outside of your comfort zone is where possibility begins to grow. It's where things begin to actually happen in the way that you want them to. So congratulations on doing that, because I think most people don't take that leap. And again, knowing your overwhelm cycle, yeah, things could have gone down the drain when you moved to Miami. Absolutely. There's that risk. but you would also know how to handle that as well.
Yeah, somehow we did. And I'm actually very proud of us. So yeah, thank you so much for the little mini coaching, if you could say so. But this is also something we realize with so many couples being in a long distance, because after a while, when dating for several months, several years on long distance, and you're still together, that you know that eventually you have to go the next step, and most probably it's going to be, one person moving towards you or meeting in the middle. So there's always, you always have to leave your comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't say that you get used to it, but at some point it just gets so natural that you wouldn't even really think about it anymore, because we're still leaving the comfort zone every day by, for example, talking in English. I'm learning Spanish, he's learning German, but English is not our mother tongue. It's just amazing to know that there's a deep connection. No matter what, you'll be able to take your relationship on the next level. And connecting with so many couples in long distance relationships and with so many couples in intercultural relationships, we notice that almost all of them do the same as we do. So everyone is leaving the comfort zone because they have to, if they want to reach the next level, which is so amazing. So that a human being can go that far for love and can jump and go for it.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I love that. And, you kind of said, oh, I don't know how we did it, but we did it. And consider that like you can actually take credit for what you did, because there were steps that you did, communication that you did, that, maybe they're undefinable, but perhaps in hindsight, you could take a look and say like, oh, this was a turning point for us. This was a decision we made together that made a difference. Mm-hmm. So I really encourage couples to take responsibility for each thing that they're doing, because it's usually a pretty good result when you're willing to work together like that. Mm-hmm. And to leave it to faith or to leave it to circumstances really takes the power out of you. Mm-hmm. And you did the work. You both did. And that's really incredible. It sets you apart because it's not easy.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't, definitely. Super proud that we managed somehow. Connecting with all those amazing couples is just giving so much energy as well, because after all, as I said before, we are all in the same situation, even though if we're different. And knowing that just gives us a lot of energy to proceed also what we're doing right now with the podcast and everything. But we also realize that, as I said before, that we are learning every day, and we always try to take our relationship to the next level. The next step would be, for example, me learning Spanish, so I would be able to communicate with him in another way, basically to build another bridge, if you could say so. I think you know what I mean. Mm-hmm.
From my end, maybe I could learn better German so that she stops laughing at me when...
No, and I love learning German. It's so cute. Adorable. Yeah. It's really adorable. He learned so much in just 2 years. But yeah, so as I said, we're trying to take our relationship to the next level day by day. But we also know how much work it is. We were talking about it earlier, about the 5 love languages, which are an essential part of every relationship. And we would love to go more into detail and talk about the 5 love languages.
Yeah. The love languages are acts of service, physical touch, gifts, affirmations, and there's one more, quality time. And what I love about them, it's all in a book by Gary Chapman. You can also go to the website and actually determine what your love languages are. We all have a need for all of these things, but some of us have a tendency to want more of one thing versus the other. So for me, on the top of the list is affirmation and gifts. For my husband, it's more about the quality time and physical touch. And the key, this is really brief, but the key here is to not just know your own so that you can ask for that as a way to determine that the person who is giving you love is giving it to you in a way that you're receptive to, but also to know their love language to make sure that you're giving it to them in a way that they're receptive. because so often you'll think that you want to give the other person love in the way that you want to receive love, right? Like do unto others as you would want to done unto you. But sometimes that doesn't actually resonate. And so really understanding what the other person needs, because if you're in love, you're willing to do the thing for the other person in the way that they need it to be done. And it actually doesn't have to be hard or uncomfortable. These are all natural things.
So if you could summarize it, summarize is the wrong word because you can't summarize something like that. But if you could give one advice to the long distance relationship community, what would it be?
I think it would be to be intentional and to know what you're committed to.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's very broad, but it's kind of an overarching concept to actually lean into what you want, lean into what you need and ask for it so that no one's doing any guessing in the process. And then finally separating your commitments from your feelings.
I think that's a great advice. Actually, I live by that definitely.
Do you?
I think that's how we got here. Yes.
Yeah, because the other day we realized that we don't have a plan. We know roughly what to expect the next month. Of course, we have a goal, but then we also realized that it's difficult to plan. And once we set a plan, it always changes. So we learned that the best way to go for it is basically to let things happen, to be in the moment, and to just go one step after the other.
Yeah, but at the same time, if you don't do anything, it doesn't happen.
Yeah, but then you do it not intentionally. It just happens.
Because you're doing it.
Yeah, but not with attention. It's just, yeah, I know what you mean. It's interesting, yeah.
Well, here's the thing. It's not either or.
Yeah.
It's both and. So there is a plan and there is that plan not happening. It's okay to be in both of those situations. And what I encourage people to do is and this is also like an explanation of my coaching. At the forefront of coaching is logistics. Okay, what is the plan? Maybe mapping out the next 1 year of your life. In some places, there will be gaps and unknowns, but what is the ideal that you would want in those circumstances? That's one aspect of things. The second aspect of things is looking at if this doesn't go the way that we want it to go, who are we going to be about it? Mm-hmm. Because you could be miserable, you could break up, or you could decide to come from a place that really feels genuine and authentic and in love and connected and choose to just figure it out from there. And I think really looking at it from kind of all of the options available is the key because life is unknown. I mean, even if you're looking at things that are not related to relationships, this is the same thing.
Yeah.
If this is the ideal way that I want it to go, and if it doesn't, how am I going to be about it? Who am I going to be? Who am I going to be to myself, to the people around me, to my circumstances? It's all about like your mindset and your ability to show up to difficult circumstances as your best and most authentic version of yourself.
Wow. I mean, as I said before, we can't go into detail as the time is not allowing it. But what you're saying there is so heartwarming right now. It just makes you realize that the path we've walked the last years is the right one, to let just things happen and realizing when plan A is not working out. And this is also something we used to say in another episode. There's always a plan B or a plan Z after all, and not to be frustrated when something doesn't work out, but to be more grateful to figure out another way together.
Totally. There's a book that I recommend, and it's not a relationship book, but it's something that I highly recommend to singles who are struggling and especially couples in this sort of situation.
Yeah.
And it's called The Power of Now, and it's by Eckhart Tolle. Have you read that?
No.
Are you familiar with it? And it's literally just that, looking at what's happening in front of me in this very moment. And more than likely, nothing is wrong. And how am I going to actually look at every circumstance that comes my way in that mentality? It's really powerful. I highly recommend it.
So we will put all your recommendations in the side notes. So for everyone who would like to look it up, you'll find it in the side notes. What else is there you could recommend for everyone who's listening?
It kind of depends on where you are. I think that book is great. Love Languages is great. Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus is kind of fun. And I think the other big thing that I would recommend is connecting with others who are in a similar place. Like, of course, getting support from a coach. Like, if you're really lost, if you're really not able to like figure it out, there's usually nothing to fix, but more about, again, the mindset of like taking a look outside of the circumstances and from a higher level. But there are so many groups like your own, like your page, your podcast, Facebook. There's lots of places where you can get supported, especially if the people in your intimate, immediate life are not the ones supporting you. That's okay. They don't have to be the ones that are in your inner circle. There are lots of people who will support you in the way that you want them to. So go and find that.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Definitely. You were talking about involving a coach when you feel there's a dead end. Is there a moment, as we said before, every couple is different, but is there a moment you realize that you reached a dead end and that it's about time to involve a coach?
So the way that I look at coaching, it's two separate things. One is there a dead end? The other thing is, do I involve a coach? Now, I personally believe in coaching. I'm trained as a life coach. I have a coach of my own. I believe that in life, always looking at what's next and how to be about your hardships or whatever is something to always grow and develop. And so if you are going to hire a coach, I recommend someone who also has their own coach so that they're improving their processes and believing in the process. So in other words, you can have a coach anytime in your life. In fact, I encourage it when you feel like you're comfortable and you're happy. And that's kind of a great time to look for a coach as well, because sometimes people think that it's only for times when there's hardship, but a lot of times we want to look at like, what's next? Are we living a 7 out of 10 life, or can we live a 10 out of 10 life? And I want to be living 10 out of 10, you know? So as far as whether you feel like, is this a dead end? I think that it is an individual question that can't be determined like in a black and white answer. But the thing to look at is, what has you questioning yourself? What has you doubting the relationship? Again, going back to like, what are the triggers? And again, choosing something, because ultimately this is about willingness and choice to be with a certain person. And yes, there is love and compatibility, which is a factor, but you already internally are using that compatibility and intuition as a factor in determining whether you want to be with somebody. So if you're having doubts about that, really it's an individual question as to whether or not you want to proceed.
I love what you're saying with also involve a coach when you're at a high, because you're right. I mean, my perspective is or was a little bit different up to the moment you just answered my question, that I would think involve someone when you're alone, when you don't know what to do and what's going to be next. But living the life 10 out of 10, that really makes me think. Of course, up to a specific point, family, friends, your significant other can support you, can push you, but it can also be very helpful to have someone neutral there, looking on it out of another perspective and giving you the last tools to get where you would like to be.
The distinction I like to make is that if you're really having a lot of hardship and trouble, the right place to look for that might be therapy, where you need to heal. Maybe there was trauma, hardship, and you need to become whole and feel like you're yourself. I see my clients as capable and whole and complete and very much able to create the life that they want moving forward. So coaching is always about future conversations. Where do you want to go next? What are the obstacles? And how can we, as a partnership coach and clients, create that tailored path to the future that you want together?
Our listeners, if they would like to connect with you, where can they find you?
Well, at Coaching by Varsha on Instagram and coachingbyvarsha.com. What I offer is a complimentary discovery session so that we can actually look at, can I be of any help? Is this the kind of support that you need? And also for me to get an idea of where you're at. because like I said, coaching is not black and white. You know, we really want to tailor the process to you. So having that complimentary session is like a great way to start.
Thank you so much, Varsha. I mean, I've learned so much out of the little time we had, the little mini session between you and us. And so for me, it's always great to connect in general, not only with other couples, but in people in general. And I'm really glad that we connected.
Should anything else come up, I do recommend, feel free to DM me or shoot me a message, not just you two, but anyone who's listening. Like, I'm happy to have a conversation about support and next steps and any of that.
I mean, unfortunately, you can't see Varsha, guys, right now, but
it's a little fortunate.
Can I say it out loud?
Yeah, I'm in my pajamas. It's okay.
No, but it's just so cool to see your face and to see how positive you are and how much energy, how much positive energy you have.
Well, I can go off on a tangent on positive energy as well, because yes, it's an important factor, but I also believe that in this moment today, I committed to speaking to you. And so I'm coming from a place of commitment and who I want to be towards you. And this is the case for any of my clients, because positive energy and willpower, sometimes they die. And, relying on that solely is sometimes not sufficient enough. It is absolutely needed, but I'm here because this is something that I believe in. You two are people I wanted to speak to. And so thank you for recognizing that. I see the love in your eyes. It's so fun to actually be able to see you and know who you are and to make new friends. So thank you for this opportunity as well.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Enjoy your Sunday and nice greets to your husband.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I will. Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this mini session with Varsha. We hope you learned a few things. Maybe you are able to see things out of another perspective. And as always, we're going to link what we've talked about in the side notes. And in the side notes, you'll also find the recommendations Varsha gave. And if you have any questions, as always, feel free to contact us on Facebook or Instagram. It's International Love Story. As you might know, we are doing this podcast because we love to share our experience with you. We love to listen to other couples, to connect with others, to talk to experts like Varsha in this episode. And we're doing all this to help and to support. And your feedback keeps us doing what we're doing. So please rate this podcast wherever you're listening to it, and feel free to leave us feedback on Facebook or Instagram. Connect with us, ask questions. We are open books. And as I said before, if there's anything we can help with, we are more than happy to support you. Otherwise, we'll hear each other again on the 9th of February. We will talk to Holly and Mo in that episode. And we're going to talk about how many times Holly packed her things to go back home. So both of them struggled in the beginning of the relationship, and it took a while for them to settle. So have a wonderful day, have a wonderful morning, have a wonderful evening, wherever you're listening to our podcast, and please take care. Bye.